Hey everybody, it's Jim and Paul with your weekly lineup. Starting on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have the Twisted Southern Horror Queen with author Lynn Gibson. At 9 p.m. Eastern, we have Dad Max with TC and Lydia Elliott. And at 10 p.m., we have Straight Talk with Matt Hazley.
And on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have Talk Time with Val. At 10 p.m., it's Rock Talk with Amy Shafalo.
And on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, we got Sports Insider with Glenn Spellman and Sean Allen. And at 10 p.m. Eastern, we have Straight Talk with Matt Hazley.
And on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, we got Bar Talk with Jim and Paul. At 9 p.m., Cosmopolitans with Lauren. At 10 p.m., we have Night Talk with Joe Rocks. And at 12 p.m. Eastern, we have Trudy Light.
On Fridays at 9 p.m., we have Sports Insiders with Glenn Spellman and Sean Allen again. And at 10 p.m., we have Straight Talk with Matt Hazley. That's your weekly lineup. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions, and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Talk Time with Val. You know, there are a lot of theories floating around the internet. I mean, for the last 40 years, we have had what can only be called the media catastrophe craze. We have had movies, we have had books, we have had theorizing physicists, scientists, all kinds of things. All discussing the end of the world, basically, or the catastrophe of things like global warming. I wanted to talk a little bit about that tonight. Dr. George Wald, Nobel Prize-winning scientist from Harvard University, said, "I think human life is threatened as never before in the history of this planet. Not just by one peril, but by many perils that are all working together and coming to a head at about the same time. And that time lies close to the year 2000. I am one of those scientists who finds it hard to see how the human race is to bring itself much past the year 2000. For the last 40 years, we have had naysayers, doomsayers. Jimmy, you remember any of this stuff?
Not really.
Over the last 40 years, haven't you noticed that things like movies and books and stuff have gone more towards like catastrophes? Let's say Waterworld. What else? What was the name? Deep Impact, Armageddon, Twister. There's been a ton of blockbuster movies that discuss the end of the world, right? You see, there are Dante's Peak. Do you remember Dante's Peak?
I've heard of it. It's an old Italian or something, right?
I'm not sure. I know the movie wasn't an Academy Award contender by a long shot. And yet, it was amazing to see the audience's reactions to it. They sat both shocked and spellbound by the enormous destructive power of the natural disasters portrayed on the screen. The movie, Dante's Peak. It was about a volcano that erupted in the northwest part of the USA. Time magazine keyed on the movie and wrote a major article on the volcanic ring of fire that extends around the coastal regions of the continents and the island chains that surround the Pacific Ocean. Did you know that there are currently 550 active volcanoes being monitored worldwide? Some, such as Mammoth Mountain in California, Popocatépetl near heavily populated Mexico City, and Mount Vesuvius near Naples and Sorrento, Italy. These three could erupt at any time and bring about hundreds of thousands of deaths. Did you know that there was an active volcano in the mountains of California, Jimmy?
No, I didn't.
You remember Pompeii, the movie Pompeii, or the historical reference to Pompeii?
Right.
That could happen right here in the US. And the thing is, if a volcano that size were to erupt, it's not just the lava that would decimate the population. It's also the ash cloud, the sulfur. People would suffocate in hundreds of miles in any direction. Remember, it was the eruption of Mount Vesuvius that destroyed Pompeii and all life around it in 79 AD. It was so terrible that it is still a symbol to this day of the tragic, uncontrollable power of an active volcano. One very important factor to remember is that volcanoes and earthquakes occur along the same fault lines and have an effect upon each other, sometimes triggering either an eruption or an earthquake. Earthquakes have made media headlines in record numbers in recent years, and there is a reason. They are increasing in frequency and destructiveness. Excuse me. Listen to these facts, Jimmy, and tell me if this is not scary. In the decades since 1890 AD, earthquakes that caused great damage and loss of life remained fairly constant in number, averaging between 2 and 4. Until the 1950s, that is. In the decade of the, so this is between 1890 and 1950. For those 60 years, you had earthquake activity between 2 and 4 for the year, right? Until 1950s. In the decade of the 1950s, there were 9. In the decade of the 1960s, there were 13. In the 1970s, there was 51 earthquakes. In the 80s, there were 86 earthquakes. From 1990 through 1996 alone, there are more than 150. In fact, in 1996 alone, measuring by the Richter scale, there were 9 earthquakes in the 7 to 9 category, 56 in the 6 to 7 category, and 145 in the 5 to 6 range. It is very important to note that most damage caused in 1996 was by earthquakes in the 5 to 6 to 6.5 range. This overrides the U.S. Geological Society's recent reassessment that only earthquakes of 7.0 should be considered major ones. There are only a couple of the many global catastrophe themes that Hollywood, the television industry, and national magazines have presented in the last, 20 years or so. But let's look at the years preceding 2000, okay? Tornadoes made the big screen. Twister was another popular disaster movie that depicted the horror of tornadoes and the fact that they were getting more powerful and more frequent. It got the same type of audience response as Dante's Peak. Areas not previously hit by tornadoes in modern times are now experiencing this frightening demonstration of nature's random catastrophic power. Areas in Arkansas were hit with twisters of record-setting power and numbers in early March 1997. They were then treated to record floods, and one victim said, "It's like seeing the end of the world," as she looked over the devastation in her community. In the last couple of years, we've had a lot of twisters, tornadoes here in the Midwest that have devastated communities. Places that have not been touched by tornadoes in the last 100 years, or that has had only minor, tiny little what they call dust devils touchdown, have been truly affected. In fact, 3 years ago, Jimmy, right here in Missouri, in St. Charles, there is this sports bar that John and I would go to play poker, right? They have a weekend game. It was just a bunch of friends getting together. Anyway, right next door to the bar, the roof was ripped off. Now the bar is connected. All these buildings are connected to each other, right? and the roof was ripped off of the fitness center right next door, and all of that heavy equipment was sucked up to the middle of the room, and the entire roof was torn out, and there was a huge hole in that section. That business place, that fitness center, was completely destroyed, right? And yet 10 feet away from it, it was like nothing had happened. That's the destructive power of a tornado setting down. It can either destroy the entire town, or it can destroy just single individual buildings. Have you ever noticed that, Jimmy?
Unpredictable.
Yeah, they're very unpredictable. Evidence of global warming heats up with the movie Waterworld, vividly depicting what could, and some scientists believe will, happen as a result of global warming. Now, I don't know if you believe if there will be another universal flood or not, but there could be a catastrophic rise in the sea level, and this would cause unimaginable consequences to the Earth's ocean front property, where the majority of the world's population lives. Now, Jimmy, you love history, right? And you're aware why most of the Earth's, most of the major cities are developed on coastal fronts, right? Well, if not coastal fronts, at least ocean fronts, right? It's because back in the day, when these cities were now being developed, they were major ports of trade. The only way any civilization or any colony could survive was if they had a method of trading goods and with basically internationally, getting stuff either from Europe or getting stuff from wherever. It didn't matter, right? Trade was important, so coastal towns developed, oceanfront cities and ports, like cities developed around ports and harbors, right? Now, can you think about this? If there was to be and we've seen it, we've seen tsunamis wipe out, devastate entire cities, yeah? Not on TV, but in the news. We've seen hurricanes destroy entire cities. Look at what Katrina did. Now, what I'm getting at is perhaps one of the worst impending catastrophes of all is the impending change in the Earth's average temperatures, with the consequent changes in global weather patterns. Scientists from many different fields have expressed great concern about mounting evidence that the world may be farther along in this menace than was first thought. No one seems to know why the planet is experiencing so many radical shifts in ecology in such a short period of time. Some think it is being triggered by the enormous use of fossil fuels. Others feel it has something to do with the alarming damage that's been done to the ozone layer. As of the spring of 1997, the annual hole in the ozone layer was doubled. From 96 to 97, the hole doubled. Since then, it's gotten progressively larger, but like I said, we're focusing on 2000 and prior to 2000. At that point, it was computed to be twice the size of all of Europe. Animals in the southern part of Argentina had been found blind because of the effects of unfiltered sun rays on their eyes. Still others believe it has resulted from the mindless destruction of Earth's air purifiers, the rainforests. The truth is, it's probably a combination of all of these and other abuses that we've heaped upon the Earth's ecosystem. Evidences of a badly damaged ecology are showing up everywhere. From London, Reuters reported in 1994 the British Antarctic Survey's Faraday Research Base on the Antarctic Peninsula has recorded the fastest sustained warming since worldwide temperatures records began 130 years ago. The rise is the fastest that they've ever had on record. People should be looking to the future.
Yeah, but that's just how many years compared to billions? You know what I mean? And they're going to try to make a decision or it doesn't make sense.
But it does make sense because you're talking about...
No, you started when it was rising.
On.
It's still rising.
No, Jimmy,
doesn't mean it wasn't back then.
Yes, it does. Because we have a direct correlation between the advances of civilization and the industrial age to the global weather patterns. There is a direct correlation.
You're telling me the Industrial Revolution started from a weather?
No, Jimmy, I'm saying there is a direct correlation that the Industrial Revolution is where we started recording everything, right? The weather changes, etc., etc. And that they have, previous to the Industrial Revolution, they have evidence showing that the weather patterns held for centuries. But in the 130 plus years,
it's fake
years
science. Now, it's all guesswork. That's all it is. They're measuring 100 years compared to billions.
Okay, so you're telling me that if you were to drop a bowling ball on your toe, and your toe was to start turning dark, and your nail was to start getting, infected, etc., etc., that there would be no relation to you dropping the bowling ball on your toe and your toe being ill?
Apples and oranges. Come on,
no, it's not.
Yes, it is.
That's
bowling ball on your toe? How's that comparing?
All right, let me put it even simpler for you. If you're hot, you turn on a fan. You get breeze. You feel cooler, right? Sometimes. Sometimes it's just hot air moving around. So what do? You put something cool in the room, or you spritz your body with water because moisture evaporating generates cold, correct? As we advanced, we developed air conditioning systems, yes? There is a direct correlation with the temperature and the use of the machinery inside. And
I'm telling you that correlation is bullshit. It's based on theory. Theory is not facts.
Yes, actually, Jimmy, the scientific...
No, it ain't.
The scientific definition
it is
of
what
theory.
it is. It's a theory.
Do you know what the theory of gravity means? It means it's a proven fact. It's not just a theory. So you understand the word theory is not just a hypothetical situation or scenario?
Yes, it is, because it's still just a theory that hasn't been proved 100%.
So gravity is a theory that has not been proved 100% to you.
Exactly. I'm telling you, 100 years from now, they're going to find different things about gravity that we completely don't know about right now.
Okay.
All right. So, like I said, it's just theory at this point. It's no 100% science.
Excuse me. Don't we know a lot about gravity right now?
Scientists are like politicians. That's the whole political science.
We will always develop more information as we grow as a society. So yes, we will always learn more about things. Even things that we thought we had discovered everything there was to discover about. We will always learn more.
And even then it was a theory and still is.
We will always discover more. But for you to outright say that it's complete hogwash because you don't agree with it, well, that's what other people do.
No, you quoted as being a scientific fact, and it's not.
What did I quote as being a scientific fact? Jimmy, I was discussing
the theory of
gravity.
Gravity, yeah.
Gravity is a scientific fact.
That gravity happens? Yes, that's a fact.
Jimmy, the word theory, right? It has... Just like every other word in the English dictionary has different definitions. A scientific theory is a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural word.
Well-established explanation. Isn't that nice? That's another word for, in their words.
Are you really going to have this argument with me? Are you really going to be this blustering?
I'm argumentative. I'll shut up.
Yeah, really, because I was trying to discuss something and talk about something, and because you personally don't agree with it, you have to shut everybody down and get really, really nasty about things, and it's annoying. Please stop it. I wasn't stating anything definitively, and I have a right to my opinions and my beliefs. If you don't believe something that I believe, it does not give you the right to start attacking me.
All right, Val, enough.
Seriously? So it's okay for you to go off a bender and act like
And
a
I
fool?
stopped, so you're going to keep going on so that I go on. Enough.
Right. Exactly. You could dish it out, but you could never take it. Anyway, like I was saying during my show, evidences of badly damaged ecology are showing up everywhere. From London, Reuters reported in 1994 the British Antarctic Survey's Faraday Research Base on the Antarctic Peninsula has recorded the fastest sustained warming since worldwide temperatures records began 160 years ago. The rise is the fastest we've had on record. People should be looking to the future, or the consequences could be dire, said Dr. John King, head of the survey's meteorological group. The Associated Press reported from Buenos Aires in January of 1997, a vast section of ice that is breaking away from the northern tip of Antarctica could make temperatures rise and speed up global flooding. A chunk of ice measuring 48 miles by 22 miles broke off the Larsen ice shelf in that year. The iceberg was expected to drift north and melt in warmer water. Farther north, a 300-foot deep ice shelf collapsed, leaving only a plume of fragments in the Weddell Sea. The Larsen cracking was caused by regional warming that began in the 1940s, and that scientists haven't been able to explain. The melting iceberg will make the climate warm up even faster while lowering ocean salt levels, geologist Rodolfo Del Valle said in a telephone interview. He said that warming could have serious global effects. If conditions remain unchanged, this could cause catastrophe flooding all over the world. That was 1997. Now, since 1997, we have seen effects of those quote-unquote catastrophes happening across the world. But, excuse me, I recently saw something that really, it was heartbreaking. Hundreds of thousands of sea life, marine life, washed up dead on the shores of different beaches. And people are like, well, so what? You know, there's some massive change, whatever. Why would all of them will die at the same time? People don't realize that if there is a change in the salinity of the ocean, for example, that it affects the marine life. It's like there being a change in the oxygen around us, you know, or the nitrogen or the helium or whatever, our air that we're breathing. That's basically what it is to them. But more than air, it's passing and filtering through their body other things as well. Now, just a change in the salinity could have massive effects on these tiny life forms. More than that, a change in the temperature could have really adverse effects. Now, if a species has been surviving in a temperature area region for, let's say, a few thousand years, and nothing has really changed for them in that area, and then all of a sudden the temperature jumps by 10 degrees. Now, I'm not saying the ocean jumps by 10 degrees, okay? So let's say it jumps by 2 degrees. Suddenly, that change, along with other changes. Now, I'm not a scientist, so I can't really, I'm trying to be as eloquent as I can possibly be. Other changes like the salinity, the chemical levels, whatever they need to sustain the marine biology. All of a sudden, there is some type of change. And what happens? An entire species in that region is affected, and every single one of them, die. In December 2016, The Guardian posted, they had an article, I think it was December 19, 2016, mystery of hundreds of thousands of dead fish on Cornish beach solved. While some blamed bad weather for predation or for beaching at Marazion at San Michael's Mount, the fish were dumped by fishing boats for safety reasons. So in that case, there were hundreds of thousands of fish found washed up on a Cornish beach, and people were trying to figure out what the hell happened. Was it like a global devastation that happened? No. What happened was that the vessel caught too many sardines in shallow water. The vessel was developing issues, and they dumped the fish into that shallow water. And of course, because the fish were on the boat for a period of time, they washed up dead. So yes, there are other reasons that these things happen. But what about when 20,000 sea creatures washed up on the Nova Scotia shoreline? Let's see, the carcasses of thousands of sea creatures washed up on the western coast of Nova Scotia. As many as 20,000 fish, lobsters, starfish, scallops, crab, and other animals turned up dead at Savory Park, the Canadian authorities said, and they had no idea why. Canada's Fisheries and Oceans Department tweeted images of the massive cross-species graveyard. Environmental officials are testing the waters for pesticides and oxygen levels for possible clues. As a precaution, they've warned consumers to only buy seafood from authorized vendors. Dead fish found on shore should not be collected by the public, the Fisheries and Oceans Department tweeted. Consumers should only purchase from licensed harvesters or sellers. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, a number of factors could contribute to fish kills. While toxic chemicals exposure can be a cause, like, oil spills, things like that, most fish kills are attributed to low concentrations of dissolved oxygen in the water. Just this year, mass fish deaths were reported in Florida's Indian River Lagoon and Hongshan Lake in Haikou, China. In Florida, dead fish blanketed the Atlantic coast for miles in March. The deaths were caused by a combination of environmental factors. Warmer waters, increased precipitation, and pollutant runoff made way for toxic algae blooms and brown tide, ultimately depleting the water of oxygen. In China, an estimated 35 tons of fish died in Hongshan Lake in May. While residents blamed the fish kill on pollution, local authorities attributed the incident to changes in the salt level or the salinity of the water. So, alright. Global warming. Take what you want from it. You could think it's a giant hoax like Jimmy does. You can think that, hey, maybe it's real, maybe it's true. But I wasn't really discussing whether it's real or not. I was going to put a bunch of facts out there, and you can decide whether those facts relate to each other, whether there's a correlation or not. That's up to you. You're thinking human beings. You have a brain, use it for yourself. Don't let anybody tell you how to think, right? Let's see. We were discussing Rodolfo Del Valle, who said that the melting icebergs can make the climate warm up faster while lowering ocean salt levels. And he predicts catastrophic flooding all over the world by the year 2030. Greenpeace, the international environmental group, gave a similar warning in a report. Entire island countries in the Pacific could disappear as sea levels rise. Excuse me. And many plants and animals could face extinction as a result of the global warming. Scientists reported that great harbor cities like New York, Hamburg, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Sydney, Miami, San Francisco Bay cities, most of Holland, New Orleans, Bremen, and Singapore, to name only a few, could cease to exist under several feet of water. Most of the Earth's population centers are on ocean fronts. Now, this is called the coming monster storms. The corollary consequence of the global warming will be storms of unprecedented destructive power, so it claims. Records set by severe weather and its aftermath are presently occurring all over the world. This is what is unique about the global weather pattern changes that are now taking place. Records in weather have routinely fallen in the past, but not all over the world at the same time, and virtually every year. Popular Science in September of 1995 ran a cover story on this theme entitled Hurricane Alert: Killer Storms Are Coming. The article revealed a wave of killer hurricanes is long overdue. So said the world's foremost hurricane expert, Colorado State University's weather wizard, Dr. William Gray. In the longer run, the Delphic message from Fort Collins is one of impending calamity. Deeply disturbed by a vision of catastrophic disaster, Gray has been warning officials in charge of safety and preparedness about what lies ahead. Typhoons, the Asian version of hurricanes, are also increasing in record numbers and ferocity. As reported in Earth Week, a diary of the planet, typhoons between 1990 and 1997 encountered at sea had sustained winds of over 230 miles per hour. That was an all-time record. Since 1997 to 2017, it actually has increased. Between 1997 and 2017, we have seen major destruction on a global scale of major cities. Massive destruction from hurricanes, earthquakes, typhoons, storms, the devastation of which and the massive winds and terror of which we've never seen before. The average person is becoming increasingly apprehensive about the future as he's made aware of these catastrophes. And with the internet and global news stations that we have today, it's very easy for everybody to be aware of what's going on anywhere in the world at a given point in time. And you know what? I'm pretty sure that the reason, Hollywood has continued to increase the production on this genre of film is because people are so absolutely terrified by it. Most everyone is interested to know what might happen in the future. There's almost a subliminal fear that something ominous and terrible is going to happen. It goes through a lot of society, you know? People have this fear that's underlying, that they think something hugely horrific. Like, I know I'm terrified that a tornado will hit here. And I have every right to be. I mean, I know that just down the block from me, there are houses or places that were built in, the 1700s, right? So you're thinking, hey, the historical part of the city or this area, nothing really devastating has happened here in this area. We haven't had earthquakes, we haven't had any real tornadoes or, big storms or anything that affected the infrastructure from the 1700s. So my house should be safe, right? Logically, you're thinking, yeah, if nothing has happened in hundreds of years, maybe, your home will be safe. And if not, you have a basement to hide in, right? But here's the thing. There's another school of thought, I don't know if this is just me. It could be other people too, but it's like, if it's all been hunky-dory and cozy and good for a few hundred years, then hell, we're due for something bad to happen. Does anybody else think like that? Do you ever think like that, Jimmy? Things are going too good, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop?
Oh, yeah. It's called a high.
Well, that's exactly what I'm thinking. It's like, okay, like John said when he was growing up, right? A year away. John is 51 years old. So when he was growing up, he said there were, they had beautiful snow days. They could go sledding all the time. The weather was pretty much the same all the time. Like, he can go on and on about it for hours. I've learned to kind of just smile and nod, right? But while we were dating, one day we were on the phone, and I heard like this screaming in the background. Like, what happened, right? And the tornado sirens had gone off. He's like, oh, don't worry about it, you know. The last time a tornado touched down anywhere near here was like before I was born, and at that point it didn't do any damage or anything. It was fine. And this is while we were dating, right? Me saying this. Of course, I couldn't help but be worried. So I told him, I said, look, just go over to your mom and your sisters and grab them and take them down to the basement and make sure everything's okay, right? So, because his mom didn't have a basement, she has a split level house. So he's like, all right. So he went to do that. And the phone lines and everything went down for a while, cell towers, you know. I didn't call him back. I prayed. And then about 12 hours later, I hear from him. And he's like, everybody's okay, but it was a pretty bad one. Now, a tornado does not last 12 hours, right, Jimmy? But it took that time for the cell towers and stuff to come back up, you know? Here's the thing. His mom's backyard, there was a tree there that they estimate is over 90 years old, right? Lightning struck that tree and split it down the middle, and one half of the tree that was split was rooted out to the ground by this tornado. The tornado didn't actually touch her house, which is amazing because it destroyed the tree that was, 5 feet away from her, like, deck. You know what I mean? 5-6 feet away from her deck. The neighbors' houses, there was like minor, foliage damage and stuff. But this same tornado was picking up speed and heading south, and it destroyed an entire area. As it headed south, it racked through some buildings, destroyed a couple of business places, and just kind of picked up ferocity. You know what I mean? It was like a living thing just growing and growing and growing. Now, after that, I'm like, are you sure we should, move to Missouri? Because we were dating, we were engaged at the time, and I was like, I was kind of hesitant to leave my family, everything I loved, and whatever, come up. He's like, yeah, well, I need to be close to my family, my mom's older and stuff. I said, yes, I understand that, so okay. In the last 4 years, the storms have gotten worse and worse, to the point where there was no tornado warnings for a few weeks. There was not even an advisory that we should be looking out for a tornado. And John and I were about 45 minutes away from home. And I don't know what, I just started feeling uneasy because we were at a farmer's market. And I thought that the animal, a couple of the animals, they were acting weird, right? I'm like, we should go. So we're heading home. Again, no tornado advisories or anything else. We're about, I would say, between 15 and 20 minutes away from home at this point. And out of nowhere, the sky just turns this nasty, roiling, blackish gray color with streaks of white through it. Have you ever seen that sky, Jimmy?
Oh, yeah.
It was, just like in an instant, it was like somebody snapped their fingers and all of a sudden the sky turned. Have you ever seen it happen that quickly?
The skies, yeah.
I'd never known anything like that could exist. I thought it would be gradual, but how can it go from a perfectly clear blue sky with just a few white fluffy clouds around to that roiling blackness just in an instant sweeping over the land? It was like something out of Lord of the Rings and the Assault on Mordor, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was, and then all of a sudden shrieks. Because, Missouri, lots of tornado sirens everywhere, right? So you hear these shrieks. And then through the windscreen, rain just started pelting down. It was so hard that we had put our hazard lights on because you really couldn't see 5 feet in front of your car. You could not see the end of your bonnet. That's how hard the rain was just sheeting down, right? And John said there's an overpass coming up. When we get there, we can, the rain won't be hitting the car as hard. We can assess what's going on. Meanwhile, I'm gripping the handrest of the car so tight, right? Because I'm terrified at this point. These sheets of rain, we hear this like rattling, howling kind of sound. Cars, meanwhile, and we weren't aware of this, were being blown off the road into the ditches and stuff, right? Cars were being flipped on the road. The winds were so high. Now, I think we're just lucky that we have a Ford F-150 truck. It's steel, it's a truck. It's more, I guess, wind-resistant dynamic to being flipped than a regular car. But anyway, we get to this overpass, which is just a few feet in front of us. And that's when I see a car in front of us, not even like 20 feet in front of us, on its side, like flipping on its side. It was nuts. John was like, we need to get into a ditch and stay in a ditch, because off to the horizon we saw what looked like, and Jimmy, it was not black. It looked like a spinning cloud. Have you ever seen a tornado close up, Jimmy? Oh, so it looked like a spinning cloud. I don't know if you listener has ever seen a tornado close up. I guess they can look differently, but this one looked like it was ethereal and yet devastating in its form. It was crazy. So it's spinning, it's twisting, it's coming towards us. And John literally took us from the overpass down into the ditch right there on the side of the overpass. He says the safest place to be when a tornado hits is like down inside that ditch for some reason. I'm not sure why. It was absolutely terrifying. Again, not a lot of destruction around because of it. And yet, if you were caught up in it, I had pictures in my head swirling around of images of, being freaking Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz and just getting swept up and a house spinning round and round and wondering where you're going to land. It was nuts. We've seen some crazy weather developing over the last few years, more so than it used to be. Not that it was always perfect, not by a long shot. But these monster storms seem to be coming up and out of, more and more often. Now, bomb shelters. Just when you thought it was safe to come out of the bomb shelters, Asteroid was produced on a TV miniseries and drew a very large audience. It portrayed in accurate scientific terms the kind of colossus catastrophe that would be caused by the collision of a metal-based asteroid with the Earth. It also showed how helpless our technology is to divert such an object from a collision course towards the Earth. I don't know if any of you out there remember Asteroid. And it was, like I said, a TV miniseries that was produced back in the day. Jimmy, do you remember that miniseries?
No, because I don't like science fiction, so I wouldn't have watched it.
Okay. Did you ever see, what is it called, Armageddon?
Was that Tom Cruise?
No, Armageddon was with Bruce Willis.
Oh, yeah, I did watch it when it first came out. I don't remember much of it.
Okay, so I think Armageddon with Bruce Willis would be the one that most people probably saw back in that day. After discovering that an asteroid the size of Texas is going to impact Earth in less than a month, NASA recruits a misfit team of deep core drillers to save the planet. Their purpose was to go up to the asteroid, drill through its whatever materials they found up there, and plant certain specific detonation charges that could break the asteroid, and hoping that the explosion would deflect those pieces out of the trajectory of the Earth's path, you know?
Yep.
That was basically the premise. Excuse me. Now, the asteroid, the TV miniseries, portrayed, it used its most accurate scientific terms, the kind of colossal catastrophe that would be caused by the collision of a metal-based asteroid with the Earth. So basically it was a precursor to Armageddon, but basically it showed what would happen after it hit, you know? It also showed how helpless our technology is to divert such an object from a collision course towards the Earth. A cover story in Newsweek, November 23rd, 1992, titled Doomsday Science, may have been the inspiration for this TV movie. Its lead paragraph declares, "Space is filled with objects that threaten Earth. Researchers are scrambling to ensure that worlds don't collide." I'm sorry, but isn't that typical media rhetoric, Jimmy? Researchers are scrambling to ensure that worlds don't collide. Okay.
Exactly. They're our heroes.
I love the media rhetoric sometimes. According to Donald Yeomans of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, sorry, I know I say laboratory. Earth runs its course about the sun in a swarm of asteroids. Sooner or later, our planet will be struck by one of them. Did you know that, Jimmy? That while we're rotating happily along on our orbit of the sun, that we are passing through multiple asteroid belts?
Right.
So you knew that?
Yeah, they predicted one to hit or something, but it's going to be a while.
They always predicting one to hit.
Like I said, it's a theory. They don't know for sure until it happens, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's like what they're doing is trying to... Okay, they're trying to like figure out, they can see 15 of them close enough that the gravity of Earth, the gravity of asteroid might cause them to kind of, you know, like magnets, be attracted to each other and pull together, right?
Yeah.
And it's like two cars on a road, or a car and something else on a road. What they're looking at is what are the odds with certain things happening that the Earth and the car will actually hit. Now, Earth, while it's rotating across its merrily around, making its orbit, it's passing through an asteroid belt. The fact is that we have meteor showers. Those are the smaller asteroids that are burning up in our atmosphere, right? But we have no way of stopping the Earth like a brakes on a car if at that same moment, an asteroid on its normal, happy, merry way, that's big like the size of Texas, is coming towards us. And if we know that, hey, in a month's time, right, that asteroid going at that speed will be at this position, and this Earth being at this speed will be in this position, so they'll meet in the same position, then it'll be a collision. That's not a theory, that's just simple math. Problem is... what are they supposed to do about it? It's not like we could put brakes on the Earth. So, you know, movies like Armageddon is born. And it's out of probability, right? It's not that they're saying it's probable. They're just saying that it's possible. Now, according to this scientist that I was just telling you about, Dr. Donald Yeomans, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. So he's a rocket scientist, right? He says there is a real possibility of an apocalyptic collision of an asteroid or comet with... he asked the question, is there a real possibility of an apocalyptic collision of an asteroid or comet with planet Earth? A review of past history coupled with new discoveries made possible by amazing new technologies now available to astronomers, physicists, and geologists suggests that there is high probability, possibly in the near future. Using these new technologies, a group of scientists known as the Carroll's Group began some it'll be 40 years ago now, counting asteroids that orbit close enough to Earth to pose a threat. In the last few years of the 1980s, they found an average of 15 per year that were large enough to wipe out all life on this planet. So Jimmy, we just barely missed dying in the 80s 15 times by a massive asteroid hit.
Right, I remember when they were saying it was going to be close. Which I heard they were going to do, and I don't know if they've tried it yet. They were going to try they might try going through the belt, is to blow one of the asteroids up and see what it actually does. Does it move it? Does it move it off target, or you know what I mean, or is it useless?
No, they've done that. Not blow the asteroid up. They haven't expended resources to actually land anybody on the asteroid like in Armageddon. But they have launched. Well, I can't say they have. It is theorized because we have no actual proof. You know, the government. It takes years for things to stop being classified and for them to reveal it to the public, right? But so there's no actual proof of this, but there is a theory that says, a conspiracy theory that says that the government did fire a nuclear warhead towards an asteroid that was, projected not in the path of Earth, but close enough that we could actually hit it. A guided missile, basically. But because they don't know what the different asteroids are made up of different materials, right? Some of them metals that we had never had contact with, so we don't know how things will react. And they detonated it basically on the surface of this asteroid. And what they measured happening was exactly what they theorized happening. It's like a bosine theory. If you have an object, it's basic laws of physics. It's proven. Like if you have a can standing on a fence, the asteroid is the can, right? Or you have ducks rolling along that fence, like, what is that carnival game, Jimmy? You know what I'm talking about? Where the little ducks go rolling along a fence and you have to shoot them?
Right.
Okay.
Shootout.
Right. So you know what I'm talking about. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. So the asteroid is like a duck on that fence in the carnival game. If you shoot it with a gun, the duck falls over, right? But if it was a balloon and you shot it with a stream of water, one shot, not a perfect stream going constantly, but once you hit it, you stopped. The balloon wouldn't pop. It would literally go in the opposite direction from the stream of water, depending on the amount of force it was hit with, and depending on the amount of movability of the object, right? So that's what they measure. The size, the weight, the density. Of course, even with water, if you hit a balloon too hard, it could pop. So with a detonation of a missile and an asteroid, it could still crack or damage or break or shatter apart, right? So they tested the theories and they figured that they could move something. But if it is an asteroid the size of a state, one that will wipe out every single living thing on this earth, then except for trees. Well, no, trees will get wiped out in the ice age. But anyway, it was something that big. We really have no defense against it that we know of. I mean, maybe NASA's been developing lasers or secret Armageddon teams, or, I think what would be really cool is there was a sci-fi production of something years and years ago where they showed a missile net. And basically what it is like it's a giant net that is attached to multiple missiles. And as the missiles are fired up into the sky, they separate. Once they leave the Earth's atmosphere, they separate and they drift like basically a quarter mile apart from each other or more. And there is a net of some kind, like a titanium net attached to them. So whatever they have put between them, it fastens the missiles to that object and then the net is pulling and all the missiles blow at the same time, but it's forcing it towards a different objective. So it starts blowing in the opposite direction, away from the Earth. I thought that was pretty cool. Maybe NASA's building one of those. We don't know, right? Unless you have some insight into NASA you didn't tell me about, Jimmy. Do you have somebody on the inside?
No, I don't.
Sucks. Because it would have been cool to find out, right?
Not at NASA, but the Japanese throwing up satellites. He does a lot with them. He's a rocket scientist, my brother-in-law.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's the owner of the company.
You should ask him then.
I know.
No,
hey, everybody's prone to make mistakes. They sent something to Mars, but they did it in kilometers instead of miles, and the thing crashed.
Yeah, no, yep. I mean, human error.
Right. It's like I said, some things are fallible.
Well, yeah. The only thing that's not fallible is God. And hell, I mean, half the people on the earth might, claim that there is no God. You know what I mean? So, you never know. But anyway, ask your brother-in-law, what are their plans in case these these asteroids do come close to Earth, or they're on a trajectory to Earth to kill us all? What's going to happen? Do they have anything in place? Because in the 80s, they found an average of 15 of these asteroids, bigger than freaking Texas. You know how big Texas is?
Right. Like I said, if we collided with something like that,
it would wipe out all life on this planet.
I don't know what size asteroid was the one that made the Grand Canyon, but it wasn't as big as the Grand Canyon, that's for sure.
And wiped out the dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Using, what was I going to say here? In 92, the average asteroid count of this size rose 35 per year. So in 80s, they had 15 of that size. By 92, the average asteroid count of that size, the size of Texas, rose to 35 of them being sighted per year. Maybe their technology just got better and they can now see them clearer. Although how you can miss something the size of Texas that's close enough to the Earth to hit us, I don't know. But in 1997, the count was up to about 75 per year. Just think about that. 92 to 97, it went from 35 to 75. In 1990 alone, Eleanor Helen of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory sighted 3 such asteroids in just 4 successive summer nights. In 1992, a panel of NASA experts reported that there were between 1,000 and 4,000 asteroids crossing Earth's orbit that are bigger than a half-mile across. Collision with any one of these would send civilization back to the Stone Age. Because you gotta imagine what would happen. A half-mile doesn't sound like a big deal, right, Jimmy?
No.
But a rock that size, a half-mile big, plowing into the ocean would create massive tidal waves that would destroy a lot of, cities and states and whatever, because those waves would run for hundreds of miles, right, before they lost any kind of momentum. Now, also, if it crashed into the Earth, right, of course, the devastation would cause, because they estimate that an asteroid the size of a half mile in radius, or in diameter, was what created the Grand Canyon. You know that, right? So imagine something that size creating something that size. Imagine the devastation that would occur around it, not to mention the giant plumes of dust and ash, the eruptions of how many volcanoes it would cause. It would cause massive destruction. Now, it mightn't wipe us all out, but it would cause massive destruction. All right, I see we have to break for commercial. Oh my. Jimmy, we've been going about an hour now without any commercial break?
Well, we're going to do them in the hour, so we're only doing one commercial break.
Oh, okay. Well, let's break for commercial. When we come back, we will discuss more about the, world's annihilation via asteroid. Because we're just fun like that. After these messages from our sponsors.
Are you hangry? Know the signs. Uncontrollable yelling.
Why aren't you egg rolls?
Hallucination.
Sushi.
Pants discomfort.
I hate you, pants.
Hangry. It can happen to anyone. Fortunately, there's E24, the app that tells hunger to shut up.
Egg rolls. Thanks, Snoop.
E24. In my medical opinion, it's the best way to order food online, baby.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you all about an amazing salon. Joyce's, located at 132 Ferry Street in Everett, Massachusetts. Joyce's specializes in the latest techniques in coloring, styling, cutting, and beach waves. Joyce's features Sukesha all-natural nutrient products and organic color. Joyce's full-service spa and salon, located at 132 Ferry Street, Everett, Massachusetts. 617-387-6688. Specializing in you.
And now, another fresh insight from Roger Berkowitz, President and CEO of Legal Seafoods.
If your wife can't take the time to test your tuna for purity, then why should you take the time to come to a complete stop before letting her out of the car? Just saying.
Legal Seafoods. If it isn't fresh, it isn't legal.
Hi, my name is Amrita Narayan, aka Valenissima. Amrita means ambrosia or nectar of the gods. Valenissima means secret of divine knowledge. Join me every Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for a night talk with Joe Rocks, exclusively on TuneIn Satellite on Armed Radio Global Network, where we will discuss food, culinary arts, baking, cooking, food preparation and presentation, bringing you a little bit of the divine knowledge so you can create your own nectar of the gods.
Plan your visit to Savino Vineyards in Woodbridge, Connecticut today. It's a family-owned and operated vineyard that grows premium grapes on 8 acres of land and produces a fine selection of wine on-site in a historic barn. Savino Vineyards is a bronze medal winner in the Amenti del Vino International Wine Competition, and wine tastings are only $7. Visit SavinoVineyards.com to find out more, and follow Savino Vineyards on Facebook. That's SAVINO Vineyards. Or call 203-389-2050 for more information.
Hi, and welcome back to this week's episode of Talk Time with Val. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Valenissima, and today I have the mostest horrific news. We're discussing catastrophes and apocalyptic collisions of asteroids and comets with planet Earth. Jimmy, you like the topic?
Yep.
It's pretty interesting. I think it's pretty interesting. So, in 92, right, a panel of NASA experts reported that there are between 1,000 and 4,000 asteroids crossing Earth's orbit that are bigger than a half a mile across. Just think about that for a second. Collision with any one of these would send civilization back to the Stone Age. There would be massive destruction. Technology would fall. We would be back to the Stone Age. They estimate that there are 300,000 Earth-crossing asteroids, at least 300 feet across. Almost all of these chunks of rock and or metal float between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. The most frightening fact is that these asteroids frequently bump into each other like giant pinballs and are pushed into unpredictable orbits. Just such a chance occurrence could put an asteroid on collision course with planet Earth and give us little warning of the approaching disaster. So let's say like a pinball machine, Jimmy, right? So
No,
we're
it's
thinking,
like asteroids. When you broke them up, and when they got smaller, they broke up. Even like I said, that they turn into dust when they smash up like that, and that's why we keep getting dust into our atmosphere coming from basically asteroid dust.
No, but wait a minute. Asteroid dust would just burn up in the atmosphere. But what I'm saying, and that's like
No, it gets
showers.
in here.
But what I was saying was, if it's a big enough one, like let's say two gigantic Texas-sized ones bump into each other, but they're both made of the same metal, right? Not rock. So let's say a 1/3 of the chunk break off, but the collision, like two cars hitting each other, right? It'll crumple, things will break off, but the two of them will go spinning in opposite directions, right? From hitting each other. That's what we're talking about. The asteroids, and then one of them, like a car spinning off in the highway after an accident, there's a random, like car right there too, just moving along, moseying along its way, and what happens? One of the cars that were in the accident takes out the semi-truck, because he was coming down the road as well, and the semi-truck happens to be Earth. The asteroid that happened to bounce off the asteroid happens to be the killer asteroid that's going to murder Earth. Yes, you heard me. Murder, destroyed, whatever. Apocalypse! And that's what they're saying. So as much as they can track these asteroids, they cannot track out of the 300,000 asteroids out there, or let's say the 4,000 ones that are large enough to actually do major damage. How are they supposed to track these 4,000 and predict every single movement that they'll make? It's literally...
See, now movements
impossible.
like that you could, because it's like you said, a pinball. You'll know which direction they move in, or you'll know which side they hit to make it move that way. You know what I mean?
Okay. How? You have 3,000 pinballs moving. No, okay, so instead of having 10 balls on the table, can you predict where every single ball, those in pool you have 15 balls, right? So can you predict in a split second where all 15 balls are going to go?
No, you don't hit them all at once.
No, yes you do. When you hit the white ball into the grop to break it up, can you predict where every ball is going to scatter on the table?
No, but you want to scatter it up smaller and smaller. Like I said.
Wait, hold on. You just said
you
it's
would
like
push
one
to go smash into another. You know
right.
what I mean?
Okay, but once...
break them up, especially the big ones.
Jimmy, the asteroids are all moving. It's not just one moving and the rest are stationary. They're all moving. So they're all of them the white ball moving on that table. But instead of the table having 15 balls, and think of 15 balls moving at the same time, now estimate 4,000 balls moving at the same time. Now let's say ball A is moving along the lower bank of the table, right? And it bumps into ball B. Ball B can either bounce off the west bank and come back up, or whatever, but it stops ball A from moving in that direction as quickly, or it bounces a different direction. All of these objects are moving at the same time. Now imagine 4,000 of them moving in this limited area.
Right, but it's moving slowly,
like
though. It's not that they're not flying by.
Yes, they are, Jimmy. You might think the Earth is moving
slowly,
but it's not.
And the astral belt, you just said it yourself, it's a belt. So if they're going to be flying everywhere, they'd be going outside that belt.
No,
they're not.
They don't fly outside the belt, because just like the Earth doesn't fly outside of its belt.
Right, magnetism.
Exactly, because it's on a road. The asteroid belt is on the same gravitational orbit.
Which that's a good thing. Otherwise, if they were all loose, we'd be in
But
big
Jimmy,
trouble.
we're passing through the asteroid belt.
Yeah, I know, but I'm glad we do it at a slow pace. And
but we're not doing it at a slow pace.
You can predict ahead of time a direction of an asteroid.
Jimmy, NASA is saying that they cannot predict all 4,000 at the same time. It's like all 4,000 balls hitting off each other.
Yeah, I know we got more than 4,000 observatories. All right? I don't know why they can't.
I was just trying to explain it to you. So listen for a second. Let me see if I can explain it again, okay? So you have 4,000 balls going in one direction. You want them to be observed? Fine, they can be observed. But predicting, let's say ball A bounces off ball B, right? We knew that would happen. But at that same time, you have to predict where balls C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P all are at the same time. So
No,
now,
you don't have to do it
Bobby-
all at the same time. You're just going after one asteroid at a time.
But Jimmy, we
You
don't
make
know
them
which.
from biggest to smallest. That's your
God.
priority.
No,
You're
Jimmy.
wondering about where these little pieces going to go. It doesn't matter. They're not
I'm
going to leave
talking
the
about
belt.
the 4,000 that are big enough to wipe out the Earth. All 4,000 have to be tracked if you're talking about that, Jimmy.
Right.
Right. So you have to track all 4,000 that are big enough to
Well,
to
there's
thing off.
when we
Every
go,
single freaking time I try to explain it to you, cut me off so I can't finish my sentence or thought.
I'll shut up.
So again, you have 4,000. It's like balls on a pool table, right? Maybe you're tracking A. So A bumps into B. Well, A is now going into a different path, but how can you predict? You don't know the weight of ball B, you don't know the weight of ball A. How are you going to predict if it's going to go into a 17-degree angle, or if it's going to go into a 27-degree angle, or a 42-degree angle? How are you going to predict if it's actually going to break apart, if its density is going to be different? How are you going to predict if it goes into a 42-degree angle, right? What speed it's going at, so then it collides into asteroid C. Well, asteroid C now goes into a different direction, and asteroid A goes into a different direction. And what they're saying is that collisions happen so often up there that there is no reasonable way for them to predict every single possible permutation of direction. It's like a bunch of balls or a bunch of beads and rattling around and bumping off of each other constantly. With every time a collision occurs, mathematical changes occur, which have to change their calculations. There's no way for them to keep track of it yet. That's all I was saying. But you're saying, no, they only have to keep track of one. No, they have to keep track of thousands. I hate arguing with you. I hate losing my temper and having to blow up. Anyway, we don't know if these asteroids are made of rock or metal. We know that they float between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. The most frightening fact is that these asteroids frequently bump into each other like giant pinballs and are pushed into unpredictable orbits. Just like a chance occurrence could put an asteroid on collision course with planet Earth and give us little warning of the approaching disaster. Just how destructive can an asteroid be? Most scientists believe that an asteroid 6 miles across hit the Earth in prehistory and destroyed the dinosaurs and most of all other life on the Earth. Just 6 miles across. So that's not even the size of the state of Texas. That's what we would term to be a tiny, mass, right? 6 miles across. Some scientists calculated that if an asteroid the size of that dinosaur asteroid, 6 miles across, hit the Gulf of Mexico today, it would create a tidal wave 3 miles high. The tidal wave would still be at least 1,500 feet high after it traveled 900 miles. As far inland as Kansas City, the wall of water would destroy everything. Even more scary, the impact would cause entire continents to burst into flames, set off numerous earthquakes with a magnitude over 8.0 on the Richter scale, block out sunlight because of the dust clouds, etc., putting the Earth into an equivalent of a so-called nuclear winter, and make agriculture globally impossible. Humans not destroyed in the initial collision would soon die. Unless, of course, you had some kind of futuristic bunker to live underneath, like underground, with where you could survive for 30 years. Like, what's the name of that movie, Jimmy? With Brendan Fraser?
I don't know.
You remember that movie? He woke up 30 years in the... No, he and his family lived underground. A plane hit their house, and his father thought that it was a nuclear fallout. And they were all locked into the bunker. Oh my god, what is the name of that movie? That's gonna bug me now. Brendan Fraser. movie 30 years in a bunker. And then when they woke up, they come out from under, like, in a club where they're like tattoos and goths and stuff, and it's called Blast from the Past. I don't believe you don't know that movie. Have you ever seen that movie? It's awesome.
I'm not crazy about him, so I wouldn't watch it.
No, it's not really about. He's kind of a dork in it, but let's see who else is there. Alicia Silverstone, Christopher Walken. You have to love Christopher Walken. Come on. What's not to love? It's Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
There you go. It's called A Blast from the Past, and it's a pretty awesome movie. It's funny as all get out. But unless you have a bomb shelter that is created to sustain you and whoever else for, not just 30 years, but you got to think from fallout like that, it's going to take time for the Earth's crust and stuff to settle back into place, for the tectonic activity to, die down, for the volcanic eruptions to clean themselves up, for the Earth's atmosphere to settle back into place, the dust to settle, the ash to settle, oxygenation to repopulate, for the sun to start coming back out and trees to start beginning to grow again, to produce oxygen and create that atmospheric barrier that we need, recreate it. So you're talking about being able to be in suspended animation for a few centuries while the Earth, just kind of rights itself. Like, pretty much picks itself off the ground and dusts its skirt off, dusts its knees off, and puts its hair back into place. A few centuries. Okay. So asteroids are bad enough, right, Jimmy? I mean, that's something that could kill us all. Something to worry about. But what about the revenge of the killer microbes? You ever think about that?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay. So, all of this, by the way, is coming from something called the Apocalypse Code, which was written by Hal Lindsey, okay? And I just thought, I just randomly had a couple of the books, and I was, reading them, and that's why I decided to discuss it. Because I thought it was really, really interesting, right? Revenge of the Killer Microbes. Now, as I said, we're focused on times before 2000. So about 46 years ago, it was only about 46 years ago that the U.S. Surgeon General declared the nation ready to close the book on infectious diseases as a thing of the past. A doctor friend of Mr. Lindsey in 1969 told him not to write about the predictions of the Bible concerning worldwide plague. He said that modern medicine had virtually wiped out the possibility of plagues and other infectious diseases. Boy, was he wrong, right, Jimmy?
Yeah.
If you write that the Bible predicts global plagues as one of the signs of the end times, he warned, you're going to discredit Bible prophecy and lose your own credibility. Hal Lindsey is a professional on Bible prophecy. Okay? That's pretty much what his niche in life is. And that's what his books are based on. Anyway, his friend told him don't write about it because he would discredit himself as a Bible prophecy expert. The book he was writing at the time, Lindsey was writing at the time, was called The Late Great Planet Earth. Of course, he says, I did include the prediction of Jesus about the coming of great plagues because I knew that we were at a point in the biblical prophetic calendar where plagues would break out soon. Today, as I knew it would, an entirely different reality has emerged. Mankind has never before faced such a threat from infectious diseases as we do now. And to make matters worse, many heretofore unknown horrifying diseases have emerged. Diseases like Ebola, Lyme disease, Legionnaire's disease, flesh-eating bacteria, Rift Valley fever, dengue fever, the Hantan virus. Several major U.S. national magazines have published cover stories on these new health threats. Popular Science in January of 1996 did a cover story that declared why we are losing the fight against deadly diseases. The Times in September 12, 1994, Time magazine's cover warned, "Revenge of the killer microbes. Are we losing the war against infectious diseases?" The Newsweek's March 28, 1994 cover raised the question, "Antibiotics, the end of miracle drugs?" Several best-selling books on this terrifying threat also appeared in the last few years, including The Hot Zone and The Coming Plague, non-fiction. Virus, a movie made for TV on this subject, scored high in the viewer ratings. Hollywood noticed that the general population had a great concern about this subject, so they produced a major motion picture called Outbreak. This made many people aware of one of the worst of the newly discovered diseases, the Ebola virus. Ebola is almost 100% fatal. Actually, this was 20 years ago, and I watch a lot of Discovery Channel and National Geographic Channel, etc., right, Jimmy? And do you know that they've developed a Ebola vaccine that is 100% effective?
Oh, yeah?
I think it's 100% effective. Hold on. Ebola vaccine effectiveness. I haven't seen it recently. Let's see. 100% effective. Yeah, it's in the clinical trials. The Ebola vaccine was 100% effective in the clinical trials. And then when they tried it in New Guinea, it was 100% effective. So that's pretty awesome, right? But you know what? As soon as we conquer one of these diseases, it seems like another one crops up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We defeated polio. Smallpox. Chickenpox is about to be wiped out.
We did, but we got them all back. Same with bed bugs. We eliminated them, and now they're all back.
Well, no, smallpox is nowhere in the globe. I mean, there's no known.
Well, that's why it hasn't come over. Any disease Mexico's got, we got now.
Well, Jimmy, what do you think I'm saying? Things like polio has been eradicated.
From the U.S., not the world.
No, I was talking about the world, not the U.S.
Oh, polio's eradicated throughout the world?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they have in labs, they have active polioviral strains, and they will keep the vaccine around for like the next few hundred years and the method to make the vaccine, and they will keep the virus around so that they can make a vaccine in case something else polio crops up, right? But effectively, the human species is not affected by polio anymore because the vaccine was given to every person across the generations until they bred the disease out of the human species, just like smallpox. Now, that's not to say that there's not some viral strain of smallpox or Ebola or, whatever, in some dark cave in a jar that's hermetically sealed off by mummification or whatever, somewhere just waiting for somebody to accidentally discover it, break it, and release a whole new deadly virus on the world, right? All possible, albeit improbable. Like, okay, let me ask you something. Do you remember reading about the discovery of the crypts of, or the pyramid of Tutankhamun?
No.
You know who King Tut is, right?
King Tut, yeah.
Okay.
It was
Tutankhamun.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I said. If you remembered reading about or watching a movie about the discovery of King Tutankhamun.
Yeah, the Three Stooges.
Okay. What do you remember about it from the Three Stooges?
They went into the crypt, the pyramid or whatever. They found the guy.
Okay, so you remember seeing
he was a mummy and he scared him out of the pyramid. You know how the Three Stooges are. It was slapstick.
Okay, so I get what you're saying. But do you know anything about the real discovery?
No. I know it came to Cambridge, Mass. here at the Museum of Science. I know they they brought him over.
All right. Let's look at the curse of King Tut. Fact and fable, okay? Let's see. Among the world's most famous curses is the curse of the Pharaoh, also known as King Tut's curse. Ever since King Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, stories circulated that those who dared violate the boy king's final resting place faced a terrible curse. Though not as dramatic as a murderous mummy, it is widely claimed that many people associated with opening the tomb soon fell victim to the curse, dying under mysterious circumstances. The legend gained traction because a few of the people who were involved in finding the tomb did, in fact, die not long after it was opened. Did the financier pay with his life? The highest profile death associated with the curse is probably that of George Edward Stanhope Molyneux Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, a British aristocrat and amateur Egyptologist who helped finance the search. His death on March 25, 1923, a year after the tomb was opened, is widely regarded as mysterious, but in fact, he suffered from poor health before he arrived in Cairo, and in any event, died from a decidedly mundane mosquito-carried disease. The idea of a curse was promoted by no less a prominent person than Sherlock Holmes' creator, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who also wrote a book explaining that fairies were real. There were many dozens of people connected in some way to opening Tutankhamun's tomb, ranging from security guards to archaeologists, and out of that, many people some unexpected deaths would be expected by random chance. In his book, An Encyclopedia of Claims, Frauds, and Hoaxes of the Occult and Supernatural, investigator James Randi notes that the average duration of life for those who should have suffered the ancient curse was more than 23 years after the curse was supposed to become effective. Carnarvon's daughter died in 1980, a full 57 years later. Howard Carter, who not only discovered the tomb and physically opened it, but also removed the mummy of Tutankhamun from the sarcophagus, lived until 1939, 16 years after the event. So, maybe there wasn't any type of, real curse associated, but realism and reality tell us, television and movies tell us, but realism and reality tell us too, that it is because those jars are hermetically sealed. Have you ever looked at some of the finds that they have in these ancient digs, Jimmy?
Say that again?
They have found that the ancient Egyptians and Mayans and Inca, when they were mummifying and when they were building their pyramids, right? Their tombs. They had methods.
Same as the Egyptians, right?
Yes, the Egyptians, the Incans, and the Mayans, all three groups. When they were building their pyramids, right? Archaeologists of today have found that they were able to hermetically seal, which means basically put something in cryostasis. They have found organs that were sealed off with no bacteria or air or anything to be able to touch them, that were as if they had just died a few days ago. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Instead of thousands of years ago. They have found objects. And it's possible that viral strains and bacteria, we have found that they can survive literally thousands of years and then wake up with no oxygen, no food, no water, nothing that we would, nothing we could conceivably think that they would need to survive. They don't need that. In fact, one of the biostudies protocol that they have in place for testing Arctic ice and Antarctic ice is that if they drill down to take core samples, that these core samples have to be in hermetically sealed containment units, and that these ice samples have to be opened in rooms where people are wearing perfect hazmat, and where there's air filters and stuff, because these little buggers, these little bacteria and viruses and stuff, some of them who are, airborne and were trapped in that ice. Jimmy, these things wake up after being dormant for like hundreds of thousands of years. We've had bacteria that has been frozen in amber, and when they extract it from the amber, right? And amber can solidify for like 1 million, 2 million, 10 million years, yeah? And be perfectly stable. They've woken it up or released it, and with the reintroduction of oxygen, these things just pop back alive. Now, it's kind of cool, but it's also kind of scary because, hey, our human bodies today is not, braced to greet some kind of Neolithic prehistoric virus, right? Things mutate, man. So people say, well, where do all these new viruses and diseases and stuff come from? Well, I don't know. Maybe they're waking up from the past, but they're here. They're here to stay. Excuse me. Now, as I was saying, Dr. Hal Lindsey, he was discussing the different revenge of the killer microbes. Are we losing the war against infectious diseases? The Newsweek March 28, 1994 cover raised the question, antibiotics, the end of miracle drugs. Now, here's the thing. If you have antibiotics, and a lot of people are stupid, I mean, we live in a world of complete and total morons and idiots. They'll go to the doctor, they'll get antibiotics, and they'll take this course of antibiotics, and they'll think that since they didn't go to med school, they know better than the doctor because they know how they're feeling, right? So they will take the antibiotics, but not take all of it. They will save some of it because they're feeling better and they don't want to take the rest. But what happens is that new bacteria inside of them, the weak bacteria that has not died off completely, is now mutating and adapting. And the antibiotics that you were feeding it to kill it, it is now developing a resistance to that antibiotic. And as it mutates, because it's mutating in your body, you're not going to get sick. But as it passes to somebody else, it's going to get them sick. And the antibiotics that you just took won't work for them because the bacteria now has a resistance to that antibiotic. And that is how the bacterial growth has mutated in recent medical history, to the point where we have superbugs that are killing people and we don't have antibiotics to treat them with, because these new superbugs are mutating faster than we could possibly create antibiotics. Isn't that crazy, Jimmy?
Yep.
So basically, moral of the story is, if you have a course of medication that the doctor gives you, take the whole damn course. Don't be an idiot. When you go through X amount of years in med school, and when you completely and totally understand the reason why the doctor has told you to take all this medication and for how long, and you absolutely know for a fact 100% that you're cured, then and only then can you stop taking the medication. Until then, listen to the damn doctor. Right? Right, Jimmy?
Wise.
Wise? Okay. How much time do we have left, Jimmy?
17 and 10 is 27.
27 minutes? Okay, I thought... Okay. Can't get the timing off. Anyway, that's good, because I wanted to discuss this with you. Now, several best-selling books on the terrifying threat of, plague, basically, appeared in the years prior to 1997, including The Hot Zone, The Coming Plague, which were non-fiction, Virus, a movie made for TV on that subject. We discussed the movie Outbreak, which discussed the Ebola virus, which at that point was 100% fatal. Now we have a vaccine for it because it's 20 years later that is 100% effective. So yay, science. The infected victim dies in a gruesome way, bleeding from all orifices, with their ravaged vital organs reduced to a liquid state. That's how Ebola kills. It's a very horrific way to go, right? Imagine influenza, cholera, diphtheria, typhoid, things like that, killing people. And we think, oh, we're so civilized now. Nope, we still have diseases that are going to wipe us out. Remember, this book was written in 1997, people, so bear that in mind when I say AIDS, the ultimate plague. AIDS is arguably the worst plague that has ever hit the earth. Its long incubating period, known as the HIV positive stage, usually results in many being infected by the carrier, often before the carrier even knows he or she is infected. Though it develops slowly, it is inevitably 100% fatal as of this writing. Now, there's treatments for it now, but there's really no cure. And, you know, the sad thing is that even with diseases like AIDS out there, people still don't get tested. And that's crazy. That's just absolutely crazy that people think, oh, it can't happen to me. Now, I mean, if you're in a monogamous, committed relationship and you trust your partner, nobody's going to blame you for not getting tested, right? Although, you know, I've seen cases where you can't trust anybody 100%. So, but I trust my husband. So the only time our blood gets tested is when we go to the doctor for like a checkup, right? But, if you're a single person and you're having sex, even if you're using condoms, even if whatever you're doing, please get tested regularly. Please get tested regularly. It is essential. Okay? Not just for your own safety and health, because there are new treatments. The earlier you catch diseases these days, the better off you are to treating them. But for the health and safety of, you know, whoever your next sexual conquest or partner is going to be. I mean, just common decency. That's all we're asking for, right, Jimmy? You think that that people should be tested, don't you, Jimmy?
I guess it ain't like you can go get a physical and say, hey, by the way, give me an AIDS test. They don't.
Right. No, but if you go get a physical, you get blood work. You can get, I don't know how this works. Let me look it up.
And they won't test for AIDS. The insurance company won't cover it.
Really? I don't know how this is done. Hold on.
Because I tried doing it. I was swinging with my wife, and I went to the doctor and told her, by the way, check for AIDS, will you? And she said they don't and they can't. It's not covered.
Wow. I don't know what to say with that to that. How do you get a blood test for sexually transmitted diseases? That's what I typed up. Let's see. Well, when you go to your doctor, your doctor can order you a blood test, check for chlamydia, gonorrhea, hepatitis, herpes, HIV, and syphilis. You're saying that the insurance company, your doctor said that the insurance company won't allow them to test for those things?
That's what she told me.
I don't think that's allowed. I don't think that the insurance company, I mean, I don't know, but how can the insurance company dictate, like if you were to develop HIV and you were to die, or you were to develop gonorrhea and go sterile from it because of a simple test that they prevent the doctors from performing? No, I don't think that's allowed. They cannot dictate medical care.
Yes, they can. Just like on the pills, all right? You got your generics and you got the other ones. But they're the same exact thing. One's expensive, one isn't. Like they dictate on what doctor can prescribe you. She subscribes me one thing. Then when I go to the pharmacist, well, the insurance don't cover it this way. You got to do this, this, and this.
Huh. Okay. Okay. let's see. Things insurers don't want you to know. That's just crazy to me. But I mean, if you go to donate blood, right? Or if you go to your doctor and guess you have to pay for it yourself.
You know, I did get a test for AIDS. I just remember
not
having
for AIDS, for HIV, Jimmy.
Right.
Go on.
It's the same. Well, whatever. And yeah, I didn't have it. I was cleared or whatever. But that was back in like 2009. But I literally had to pay for it out of my pocket.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you have to pay for it out of your pocket, you have to pay for it out of your pocket. But the fact is that it's essential to get tested.
Well, that's why a lot of people won't do it. You know, it should be as frequently as every physical. That's what it should be.
How often do you get physicals?
Once a year.
No, you should get tested for any sexually transmitted diseases anytime you have risky sexual behavior.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen. Not just to me, but a lot of other people.
I understand what you're saying. I do. I'm just saying that, you know, for safety. Like, I heard a story. My husband told me a story that his buddy told him. His buddy was in the Navy and overseas, right? And apparently they run around doing a lot of, you know, sexually promiscuous and risky behavior, right? This was back in the 80s, so it was a lot of sexually promiscuous behavior, right? Anyway, the buddies had a friend who was really just a man whore, basically, and he had gotten a shot for an infection. Well, not really an infection. But, Jimmy, what do you call it when there is basically the urethra is so infected that it's like frickin' glass inside there?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's the clap. Is it the clap? Is that the word he used?
I've heard the clap, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, I think it was the clap is what he said it was. Well, basically gonorrhea, right? So yeah, it basically causes severe infections in the genitals, the rectum, the throat, and it was pretty bad. Okay, to the point where he couldn't pee or anything. It was like there was a blockage. He's in pain, but he didn't go to the medic because the medic there had already warned him about his risky sexual behavior, right? And they told him if they had to give him these antibiotics and stuff again, that they would write him up. So the buddy came back to the infirmary and he came back to the ship and he didn't go to the infirmary. He had gonorrhea and it just got worse and worse and worse. Finally, he was in so much pain, screaming, sweating, fevers, you know, that he had to go to the infirmary. By then, it was so infected, Jimmy, that they had to take a tiny needle that's like a bottle brush, okay? And here's what happened. They take this tiny rubber mallet and they hit the penis with it in order to break up the infection because it was so concentrated in the urethra. It was like crust, like, you know, just like crusted in there. They had to break it up. And then they take this tiny thing like a needle with like a metal spinning brush in it, or like a spinning brush, and they stick it up in there to sweep the debris and flush it out. And then they flush it out with like an alcohol-based solution, Jimmy, to kill bacteria. And they don't put you under anesthetic for this. Can you imagine that type of torture?
Yeah, like I said, they'd have to put me out.
They don't put him out like under anesthetic for it. I think the guy passed out, but yeah, that was the story I heard. I don't know how true it was, but it was very, very graphic. And I'm thinking, how could you possibly risk your life and your risk sterility, the inability to have kids, the inability to to feel anything down there anymore? How can you risk those things for like a romp in the hay? How stupid do you have to be, right?
That's it.
But then I also hear about people these days who like, and it's just creepy. So, I mean, anyway, let's not talk about the creepy sexual proclivities of certain people. Let's just not do that. So we were talking about AIDS, right? And the thing that makes AIDS so difficult to fight is that it is primarily passed on through one of the human race's strongest drives, sex, thus guaranteeing its geometric spread. When you factor in the fact that this is the first time in history a person infected with 100% fatal infectious disease has been politically protected, there is no hope of ever stopping its spread. Even persons with the new strain of tuberculosis, which is not 100% fatal, are often quarantined. But it is illegal for a doctor to even tell his nurse that the person she is treating has AIDS. Many persons who have either HIV or full-blown AIDS handle food in restaurants. AIDS spread like wildfire in sub-Saharan Africa, where in many places it is reported that the average male has an average of 25 different sex partners per year. There are whole villages in this region where there are no more adults, only very old grandparents and very young children. The Republic of South Africa has been viewed as the last hope for helping sub-Saharan Africa rise from its economic and social ruin. But recent medical reports, remember this book again, 1997, recent medical reports from South Africa reveal a developing nightmare. Authorities estimate that there are at least 500,000 persons who are already HIV positive. Medical experts in the country indicate that the number of HIV carriers doubles every 13 months. They see brewing a public health crisis of apocalyptic proportions. According to those consulted, they believe millions could die of AIDS in a relatively short time. They estimate that the current rate of infection, approximately 16 million South Africans between the ages of 14 and 50, could be HIV positive within 5 years. To understand the catastrophic implications of this forecast, approximately 20 million South Africans voted in the recent general election. This means that most of the productive adult voters will soon be dead. The CIA is of the opinion that once 20% of the sexually active population is HIV positive, the social structure collapses. This is exactly what happened in Zambia, Uganda, and Zaire, as reported in the International Intelligence Briefing on June 10, 1994. Well, we have different information because we have the benefit of getting this information. We have the benefit of living 20 years more, after this was predicted. But let's see what the doomsayers were saying back in 1996, 1997, right? Some grim facts about AIDS. Here are the grim statistics of the known HIV/AIDS cases compiled by the World Health Organization as of 1996. HIV infected, 29,400,000. AIDS cases, 8,400,000. Deaths caused by AIDS, 6,400,000 as of 1997. As of 1996. The epicenter of AIDS has shifted from Africa to the exploding populations of Asia. World health experts project that India alone, with the second largest population in the world, could have 50 million infected with HIV by 2000 AD. Well, history has shown us that India was actually one of the few places that did not have an epidemic of HIV or AIDS. Places like Bangkok, Thailand, and Manila, Philippines, which are world-renowned for female and male prostitution, the AIDS problem is already approaching catastrophic proportions as of 1997. there has been a lucrative travel business in sex tours brought over from Europe and the USA for years. Newsweek, March 28, 1994. Okay. We have to remember that this segment on AIDS was written in 1997, and we know a lot more about HIV and AIDS now. So him saying things like a lot of waitresses and waiters, people preparing your food, have AIDS and stuff. Anyway, I'm sure I don't have to go through this again. Everybody knows what there is to know about HIV and AIDS. I'm sure about that. They're taught about it in school. They know how to protect themselves. They know what is a real possibility of infection and what is not a real possibility of infection. All right. I do think it's crazy, though, that a doctor cannot tell a nurse that she's treating a patient with HIV. Jimmy, don't you think that's crazy?
She's what?
A doctor is not even allowed to reveal to his nurse that his patient is HIV positive or has
exactly.
AIDS.
It's stupid.
That is ridiculous. If you are treating
Especially
the
when
person
other
medically,
people's...
exactly. If you are treating the person medically, then you have a right to know, because you are being directly exposed to something that can kill you. But again,
Exactly, and that outweighs the right for them not to know. You know what I mean?
I think so. I'm not saying that every Tom, Dick, and Harry needs to know their business. That's their medical business, right? What I am saying is that if you're a medical professional, if you are taking blood or dealing with the bodily fluids of somebody who is infected with a virus or infected with a disease that can be transmitted via those bodily fluids, via the blood, and there is any possibility of infection, that you should be made aware. I think that that's just how it should be. I don't like the idea that nurses are kept in the dark and told just to do their job. That's crazy. And that's why they have so many protocols. That's why they have so many layers of gloves and, layers of whatever, smocks and stuff to protect from needle stabs and whatnot. But I mean, what if some crazy psycho decides to try to take out the nurse? You know what I mean? Grab a needle and stick her with it. Make it sound like a accident or whatever. I don't know. I just don't think it's right. I think that if you're a medical professional and you're treating the person, you should know. That's ridiculous to me. And the thing is, here's the weird thing, I'm all for privacy, you know? I want people to have their privacy, but that's just stupidity, I think. Now, we've been talking extensively about some of the things of the Apocalypse Code, right? And Jimmy, we have what, 10 minutes left? 7 minutes left. Okay. We've been talking that's what I was going to say, 7 minutes. We've been talking extensively about this Apocalypse Code. And I actually think it's really interesting because of this. Now, the Apocalypse Code was written by Hal Lindsey. Hal Lindsey is the best-known prophecy teacher in the world and author of 15 best-selling books, including Blood Moon, Planet Earth 2000 AD, The Final Battle, and Amazing Grace. On the back of the book it says, the prophet Daniel predicted there would come a time just before the return of the Messiah, in which man's knowledge would be greatly increased. Many secrets of the universe will be revealed. That time is now, as predicted in Hal Lindsey's best-selling book, The Late Great Planet Earth. In this riveting non-fiction book, the father of modern-day Bible prophecy cracks the Apocalypse Code and deciphers long-hidden messages about man's future and the fate of the earth. I think that since this book was written and published in 1997, and since the book was written, 20 years have passed, I thought it would be interesting to read the book and see just what was predicted and if it has come to pass. Especially since, Hal Lindsey is touted as being the father of modern day Bible prophecy, right? Because in my thinking, anybody can take something and twist it to suit their needs. I've seen that happen, especially when they're trying to sell books or trying to sell movies or whatever, right? And I wanted to, to look at it. Now, from what I've seen here, the predictions about AIDS, from what I've read to you, the prediction about HIV and AIDS was just a lot of doomsaying. But here's the thing. Back in 1997, that was the norm, wasn't it, Jimmy?
Yep.
AIDS was such a big deal. It was so scary that it was literally those estimates that he gave were true and real figures to them at the time. But nothing. I mean, I'm not saying AIDS didn't devastate certain parts of the planet. HIV didn't devastate certain parts of the planet. But I am saying nothing close to the apocalyptic, annihilation that they're talking about. 50 million people dying per year, entire tribes being wiped out, 500 million people dying in India. None of those things happened, right? Not even close. So let's see. I would advise that you go and pick up the book if you can and read it, but I'm thinking about making a series out of this book right now. Mostly it's like this. We look at the diseases they're talking about. We look at the miracle cures that they predicted. We look at the correlation of what he's discussing and whether or not it can actually be tied into what is known as the Apocalypse Code, or in Revelation, the apocalypse, the return of the Messiah, and the wiping out of the evils of the earth, right? On the evil proclivities of mankind. Here's a section here that says, and now the end of miracle drugs. In the beginning of the 1950s, medical optimism was very high as so-called miracle drugs like penicillin and antibiotics became widely used, producing amazing results. Also, there began to be great strides in the fields of immunology and vaccines. It truly did appear that infectious diseases were on the verge of being wiped out. But doctors like Richard Wenzel of the University of Iowa have soberly recognized that from the beginning of the miracle drugs, man and microbe have been in the foot race. It's a race in which the leads keep changing. In 1946, just 5 years after penicillin came into wide use with World War II, doctors discovered that Staphylococcus had become invulnerable to the drug. We discussed this earlier in the show, didn't we, Jimmy? How people mutate these viruses because of lack of intelligence, lack of information. Okay. No problem. Smart pharmacologists invented or discovered new antibiotics. The drugs pounded the microbes into submission once again, but the bacteria regrouped and the mutants capable of fending off the largest drug or the latest drugs appeared. New drugs, newer mutants. And so it went. Overall, the drugs retained a slight lead, and slowly scourges such as tuberculosis, bacterial pneumonia, blood poisoning, syphilis, gonorrhea, and other bacterial infections that hark back to a time of high button shoes were vanished. Now, I have 2 minutes left, and I would love to continue Why the Media Catastrophe Craze with you, but I guess I'm going to have to pick that up on the next episode of Talk Time with Val, where we will finish talking about the devils of the microbe world, the age of super infectious diseases, an urgent warning from the World Health Organization, the sum of catastrophe is overwhelming, the psychic boom, and basically the correlation of biblical prophecy to all that we've discussed so far, as written by Hal Lindsey. So we'll discuss that on the next episode, and then we will discuss Chapter 2 of the Apocalypse Code, which actually goes into the Apocalypse Code. And this is actually really, really interesting stuff. So I hope you join me then for this. And remember, from next week, you will be able to call in to my show live and and participate with us interactively to discuss these topics. But until then, I want to wish you a good week, a good night, and blessed be.
Hey there, all you creepy people. This is Kevin Wayne from Portland, Oregon. You're listening to Armed Radio, home of the big guns.